Please welcome Lauren Freeman, Eric from Evade, Alex from Jailbreak, Pearson from Bee Swarm Simulator, and Colin from Gunfight Arena.
Oh, nice turnout. Yeah. We got our plant. We requested that specifically. I wanted a fern, but. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I am here with an amazing panel of developers. I think all of you probably don't need an introduction, but let's do that anyway if there's like one person in the audience who doesn't know who you are. Colin, can you kick us off?
Yeah, my name is Colin Denatov. I go by CD Development on the platform. I've been making games on Roblox for coming on about 14 years now. I primarily have worked on games like Recoil, Rolling Thunder, and most recently Gunfight Arena. And yeah, that's like literally my life story right there.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi. Sorry. My voice is cracking, so bear with me. I'm Pearson Harbutt. I'm Onette, the developer, the sole developer of Bee Swarm Simulator. I joined Roblox in 2009. I worked on my own mobile games for many years and finally made my first Roblox game in 2018, Bee Swarm, and I've been at it ever since. Yeah.
I'm Alex, and I've been on the platform for about close to 17 years now, back in early 2009. Created Jailbreak and launched that with Asimo about 8 years ago now, a little over 8 years ago.
Hi guys, I'm Henry, known as the Henry 101 on the platform. I've been also on the platform for 17 years. Damn, I'm old. But I've started development in 2009. One of the first games that I worked on was Space Wars, an oldie for those veterans. For some of those zombie fans, I created DayZ Remade in 2016, and now I'm on Evade.
Thank you so much. I forgot to introduce myself because I was so excited to get to these guys. I'm Lauren. I'm the head of creator feedback at Roblox. Let's get started. We have a ton to cover in a short amount of time. So today you're going to hear about how to run live services, how to continue to delight your players, bring them back to your game for years and years. We're going to walk you through the development lifecycle, starting from like early ideation before you launch and following that all the way through to having your game out for many years, as you all have. Let's start with that early pre-launch phase. Love to hear about what were you thinking about at that point? Were you planning for live services? Did you have a plan for the content that you wanted to release after you launched? Let's take the audience back many years ago and where you were at that point.
Me?
Yeah,
okay.
Jump in.
Yeah, so in the early stage, I was directly inspired by a trend, the snow shelving simulator game, the incremental clicker collecting trend at the time. And my entire conception was that I wanted to take this very addictive and visceral mechanic and turn it into a more proper world. And I reflected in the early stages on my favorite games growing up, MMOs, and I had pretty thorough spirals. And I think I had a pretty good conception because the initial reason for making the game was so straightforward. What was going to make mine stand out was the elaborate stuff. So, yeah.
Did you was your intuition right? So once you launched the kind of content that you had planned, was that the content your players wanted, or did it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think so. What Bee Swarm added was basically just more complex mechanics to something that people already knew, were very familiar with, and that's why it stood out. I mean, on top of also just having a unique style and stuff. But I think from the start, I had a game plan of, okay, I'm going to hook them in like this, and then I'm going to sink a couple more hooks into them once they unlock this gate, once they discover this new mechanic. And that was a very conscious plan, and I just kept adding layers to those hooks, and yeah.
Alex, let's jump to you, not to put you on the spot, but you told me, maybe you didn't plan quite as much as Onette did. What was your story back before you launched?
Yeah, so back in about 2016, 2017, there was a game called Prison Life Maybe you guys remember that. And it was like huge game on the platform. And I remember finding that game and a couple other like it, Redwood Prison, and I love those games. And those games were all about life inside the prison, and so the role play and all this sort of thing. I played them so much, and I was so eager for what was next. I wanted to escape the prison. I wanted to go rob things, and so Jailbreak is kind of the perfect complement to all those games, where it's like the actual starting of the game in the prison is a very small part of Jailbreak. It's all about what's left after. So I didn't really plan a lot intentionally because I kind of just had this feeling of what I wanted out of the game myself. So I think the lesson is like, make something that you find fun. I also think, and this is something we learned from trying to launch successive things after Jailbreak, it's like you can do a lot of planning, you can think a lot about retention, but if you find a way to do 2x your retention or something, it's like if the game isn't fun, like 2x of 0 is still 0. So I think it's really important to find that fun in the early game and make sure you're testing the core loop and just get something out there and plan for the fun, but don't worry too much about optimizing every single thing.
I feel like it's easier said than done, though. How did you know that you had nailed the core loop?
We didn't. I mean, we had no idea Jailbreak was going to be the success that it was. But I think there's something about, if you find it fun, then like maybe other people find it fun. And getting people into the game and getting people to play it. And I think there's probably people in the audience that we had even in the first week to just try out the game. So thank for any old friends that have done that. Just get your friends in and like try it out and see if it's fun and just follow the fun. I think that's the most important thing.
Okay. Henry or Colin, either of you want to add?
Yeah, sure. I think I agree with that 100%. I was definitely going to say, like, when we were planning Gunfight Arena, like, we just started by making it a fun game that we wanted to play and kind of make it the way that we enjoy the game. And I think that puts you in, like, a really good position when you're talking about a game that has broader appeal, because if you find it fun in that way, then it kind of puts you in this position to almost predict what the community most wants out of it, and you can plan ahead your updates and plan things before players even really come up with it, and it allows you to release updates almost preemptively and get a lot of good feedback on that. I also will say it's probably best to acknowledge that no matter what your roadmap plan is, it's not always going to be like 100% on the money, so you should leave some room for player feedback to influence some of your future updates, and be ready to just like, this week we're doing something different because that's what the players want.
Thank you.
And for Evade, when Evade launched, we thought, we were really inspired by Nextbots, and what we thought was, hey, why don't we just add some creativity to that? We add a lot of features that the players can earn cosmetics, they can interact with their friends with emotes, and voice chat was added so they could play with them and just be chased around and be very expressive in voice chat. A lot of where Evade was, where it first started, and where it is now. We started with a narrow mindset and just took a lot of perseverance, and here we are today.
Henry, how quickly after you launched did you ship emotes and aesthetics? Was that like an immediate right after, or did it take a while?
It took a little bit.
Okay, cool. Let's jump to the next stage. So, you've been post-launch for a little while. How did you prioritize subsequent content updates or running events? I'd love to hear a little bit about how things, changed once you have players coming into your experience at higher volumes.
Yeah, okay, so like I said, we did not anticipate Jailbreak, blowing up like it did. I think day one we had 70,000 peak concurrent players, and that was at the time ridiculous. And I remember being so overwhelmed. Like, my social media feeds, where I was originally just getting, tens of replies a day, I was now getting like thousands an hour, and I was like, everything about my life has changed. Like, there's a new priority, and I need to figure this out. The first thing for us was to really just dive in and figure out how to digest the swarms of information we were getting. So find the people making the YouTube videos, read the comments, and it's overwhelming too because the game, the game was not perfect. There's lots of bugs, and so it was actually quite difficult to look at some of that early feedback. And even the YouTube videos, there's lots of things wrong, and clearly people were liking it. So just getting a grapple on like kind of setting up. I had some friends, and I said, like, can you help me curate some of this content, or like curate what ideas people have? And then from there, it was just making a list of like, what were the problems? Let's fix those immediately. What do people want out of the game? Like, what is the potential directions of the game? And then, that's one part of the Venn diagram. And the other one's like, what do I want to work on? And it's like choosing right in the middle. Like, what do people want out of the game? What do I want to work on? And then keep adding those things. And we decided, kind of spur of the moment, I don't even really remember, that we would start doing these weekly updates because we didn't have this long-term plan of what we wanted out of the game. We just said, people are having fun. Let's keep adding things to keep them coming back.
Yeah, I'll build off that. So kind of like I mentioned, in the early stages of Beast Form, I started with mostly like doodling and planning out. So I noticed those first few weeks and those first few months were really just bringing the game to fruition, like giving bees leveling or even equipments and stats, like more complicated stuff like that. I knew from the start that it should be there, but like Alex kind of mentioned as well, like I didn't want to waste my time on something that was just fundamentally not fun. I released Beast Form, and I would say like it looked very much like it does today, but I knew that, I knew that it was going to flesh out into something else. And so it was much easier to do those first few updates because I knew exactly what it had to be. As I got a few months in, I started, these were bottom of the barrel type. Not bottom of the barrel, or ones that were a little more ambitious and stuff, or that not quite as essential. And I could become more experimental because Beastorm had a more solid base. But it went from weekly to bi-weekly to monthly to annually. But
were these like major features you're shipping?
Very major features. Like if I do an update on Beastorm, I want it to feel substantial, and I want it to add something that is unlike all the other mechanics in the game, but still feels like it essentially should have been there from the start. Like you would be like, man, I can't imagine Beastorm without this. But yeah, that early stage, I would say, was just coming into fruition. So it was quite easy, but extremely stressful. And the emotional toll of having all these people yelling at you and going from hermit life to basically, social media and YouTubers hitting you up, that was the hardest part. Yeah.
So it sounds like early days you had a pretty clear idea of what you wanted on your roadmap, and you were following some existing paradigms that were out there in terms of the features that were needed. But after that, you got a little bit more experimental in the months to come. Yeah. Colin, how about you?
I think we were kind of in a little bit of a fortunate position because we had released our game a little bit unfinished, I would say. Like, as bad as that sounds, it is important to save some stuff for updates and just acknowledge that users are going to be interested in content later. And then in addition to that, with that initial roadmap, we also were fortunate to release right around like holiday season. Like we released Gunfight Arena pretty much right before Halloween. So it kind of left us in this very fortunate position where even if we hit a week where we're like, I don't really know what to work on this week, there was a holiday coming up. So we were just like, oh, well, let's do Halloween, or we've run out of ideas, let's do Thanksgiving. And just having that kind of real world events influencing little live ops and things that we can do in the game at that same time helped us a lot, especially when we were struggling to figure out what to do next. And then later on, we just kind of got, I think, a lot better about planning things in the future, for sure.
Tell me a little bit more about these seasonal events. So were they seasonal events type? Like, did you have limited items that came up with those events too?
Yes, most definitely. We played around a lot with just doing like, oh, maybe for this event we want there to be like a boss fight that people do, or maybe for this event we just want it to be like a simple quest to get specific in-game items. I think one of the fortunate things about our game is that we left ourselves a lot of room to add a lot of different types of seasonal content. So it always felt like there was something fresh and new every individual holiday.
Okay. And one thing you had shared with me previously was about your content cadence, right? Because for a first-person shooter, I think you told me you were getting a lot of feedback from players. They want more guns, heavier artillery, just give us more. But you intentionally decided to pace that back.
Most definitely. Yeah, we were at a point where it was actually kind of somewhat easy for us to add new guns to the game. So if we really wanted to, and there were some weeks where we were excited and we were like, we want to add these like 10 guns all at once. And it took a little bit of mental anguish to just kind of convince ourselves that, well, the players are really just not going to notice much of a difference that week between like 2 and 10 guns. So it's better to just save those and pace them out. So instead of having 1 week of like kind of a large update, you have 10 weeks of just an update. And that's definitely very helpful, I think, for upkeeping community interest for sure.
I think it's a good lesson too, because you shared like to produce those guns, it's not terribly complicated. Like your team is capable of producing them, but just because you're capable of doing it doesn't mean you necessarily should. Alex, did you want to add on?
Yeah, I was going to add on. We really had this problem too, and the game is entirely monetized and kind of the scarcity of cars, and but we wanted to figure out a way that we could there's fun ways that you can kind of put it all in at the same time as well, and I think you've probably done this too, but like with a season pass system.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, so you can like progress through. It's like even though you launch 10 new guns, maybe they're not all in the shop at the same time. It's like you naturally unlock that. So we started doing that for Jailbreak, and that's been a really nice way to like get all the content out and let people like work towards it and see the vision of like what they're working towards.
I will say, though, in our studio specifically, working on season passes was so stressful because we went from adding like 1 gun a week to this week, let's add 60 guns. Yeah. It's like really hard.
Yeah.
That's fair.
And similar enough to Colin, we did also things seasonally. We still are on our updates. We don't do like monthly updates. We don't do quarterly updates, but our updates are strong. It's player first. We do think about what the players may want to see in the next update, especially if it ties to a holiday or even a collaboration.
What are you using for signal to kind of determine what you need to do? Are you looking to your analytics? Are you like taking
I would say between analytics, we also have a large testing team. And those are actually made up of our past players from the previous title, Tower Blitz, and from those early supporters that did support us in our first few weeks before we took off as a title.
All right. Let's spend a little bit of time on, we've kind of covered on this. Or, Onat, did you want to add something?
I think there's a tidbit that could be useful.
Yeah.
So like in regards to how much you're releasing content and stuff, I think we've seen it clear as day with certain trends that have come and gone, that you can quickly, by caving to demands of the community and what seems so obvious, follow trends without even realizing you're doing it, and tacking stuff on until your game becomes top-heavy and caves in on itself. I think the reason B-Swarm has lasted relative to other incrementals, other simulators and stuff, is because I built a trust with the players that they knew, like, okay, I'm not giving you what's the most obvious update right now. You want the weekly 5 newbies, you want this or that. But I'm giving you what I think you will desire more in the end. And that's what allowed me to get away with a slower cadence and gave the game more longevity. So many games don't even realize that they're chasing trends, that players will go to other games and get their fix there. And your game just becomes a hollow kind of just representation of a moment as opposed to its own product. So you have to, my philosophy, I mean, I work really slowly, but my philosophy is to really think about your updates before you put them out there and don't just chase, the short term.
Yeah, whenever you talk about this, it really strikes a chord. It seems like you've done a great job maintaining your initial hypothesis of what the game should be and what it needs to be, and not pandering to like the noise. Like you factor it in, but it's not what's driving.
I mean, I'm very stubborn about that. I'm very sensitive, so I do listen to the noise, and I watch my Discord, I watch YouTube and stuff. But I think the reason B-Swarm has remained its own thing and remained alive was because I chose to stay on the path that I took when I started. I haven't brought on help, so there's been no dissolution of accountability or creative vision. And I think that's one of the special things about Roblox. I don't have to work with a team. I have this invisible team behind me that is taking care of all the technical stuff, and I'm allowed to do the more fun and simple and naive side of design and drawing and music, and that's what's made it retain its core. Yeah.
Did any of you ever ship event or content pack or feature that you were like, oops, like this is not aligned with what our players want, and they told you about it and you had to do something about it?
All the time. All the time.
Tell us more about that, Colin.
I would say it's really difficult because it's usually the features that you find yourself working hardest on and that you're most excited about that the player base is just not jiving with. And yeah, it's a bit painful to learn that lesson and to learn that occasionally it might help to listen to more people. And I will say that, yeah, it's also difficult immediately after that process because then you're like, do I roll back? Do I pull this out? Or do I just kind of like smooth it over and hope it goes well? So I think in our approach, we've gone more smooth over and just kind of hope how it goes. But I think looking back, there were some things that I would definitely just roll back.
Yeah? Anybody else?
Well, actually, now that I think about it, just thinking about it, just we have released some updates, and obviously there are, it's rather than the players being upset of the things that we release, it's more so misusing the things that we release.
Okay.
So then we quickly, just jump on it, and we call that the first 48 hours. Just being up and making sure that the update is just going smoothly.
What is they're like gaining an unfair competitive advantage, or what are they?
It could be that. It could also be with anything that's emote related.
Okay. Yeah. So you have to pay close attention, make sure that everything's safe, and that how they're engaging is, sometimes you can't anticipate it. I got you. All right. Let's talk a little bit about, you all have relatively different team structures, kind of coming from different backgrounds, different disciplines. How has your team evolved, if at all, from like pre-launch to, later after, launch, say a couple months, 6 months later, a year later? Did you grow your team? Did you find yourselves like having to hire new disciplines? Would love to hear a bit about that.
Yeah, I can go. Yeah, so we've pretty much maintained our same team size, actually. So it launched just the two of us. But the things that we do now, I would say, would be impossible truly with just the two of us. And the reason I say that, and what I mean by that, is like the community that has grown up around us, and between the QA team and our Jailbreak Creation Season Contest members, and like all these communities that do like the Jailbreak Motorsports, like there's all these sub-communities, and all of them have their own part of the game that they care the most about. And so it goes all the way from like the QA team who will send me an Excel sheet of like every bug that I've introduced into the game in the past update, and like double checking, I had mark when I fix it, they like double check it, either it fixed or it didn't, and they tell me to recheck it, this sort of thing. Or people, of course, are sending their ideas in all the time, or the creators are like literally giving us assets and this sort of thing. And so, even though it's just the two of us, and we've had a couple of contractors here and there, it's really the team is, hundreds of the community, and, all the way to, exploit and security research and all this sort of thing. And so it is a beautiful thing. And the YouTube creators, like, it all comes together as this one big team. And it's quite fun how that just self-organizes around.
I love that, the broader community.
I sympathize with you, absolutely. The team started as 2, we moved to 3. But I would say all our testers are part of the core team, all our community. Even not being testers, that we've had so many bug reports. We have a section just for bugs, and we just get a lot of feedback from our community. Equally enough, we also get some of our maps. We get emotes from some of our community, which are absolutely awesome. Some things we weren't even thinking about.
Did they self-organize, Henry, or like how much of that was you kind of setting up the mechanisms for testers versus them doing it on their own?
We leave that option open for them, and then we go through a process of selecting, what could be seen in the next update.
Okay. Alex, do you want to add?
Yeah, I want to add really quick. I want to say, I think, and I'm curious actually for all of your thoughts, but it was kind of an intentional decision for us to stay the small team. I think very early on when we were having the success, we realized that there's kind of this diverging path of like, we could start hiring a bunch of people and grow into this huge studio, or we could just stay kind of the two of us and have this community that's helping us. And I think what we thought, at least at the time, was that there was something unique about the two of us working together, me and Asimo, and that was something special. Like we made something special because of that. I think you're probably
absolutely. I mean, to build off, like I didn't think about this in rehearsal or anything, but when you're talking about like the team, it just naturally coalesced. Like my Discord just manifested, and they had to force me to get ownership of it. And B-Swarm is the way it grew mechanically. It wasn't like a typical RPG with like typical stats and stuff. There's this huge macro community and really brilliant people like the Natro Macro guy that transformed. The community transformed the game, and I had to adapt to how they play, and I found that so engaging for me. It was fun for me to put out my cards, like these certain mechanics, and see like, wow, instant conversion does this when they do this, and I never would have thought that, and to try to save mechanics that I thought were essential, like capacity or whatever. But essentially, B-Swarm grew into this crazy kind of hyper min-maxed macroing game with spreadsheets and stuff that I never anticipated. And so it wouldn't be fair to say that I designed it all myself. I think on team scale, though, I don't like a contract. I don't want to, go a corporate route, because I've seen it pan out where like you said, when it's an individual or it's a friendship, there's a soul there. There's something infinitely accountable. As soon as it's an arrangement to make some money between people, you will start to inevitably lose it. And but the nature of social media and all of this is that we have that that back and forth, and we have those guiding hands and those brilliant people that rise up and out of their own will and passion and love for your game put countless hours into these auxiliary tools and just setting up Discords and stuff. Yeah. And that feels way more natural and better,
It's
just
so cool. Just
honest.
this concept of the broader community and influencers as an extension of your team. But I also know for you, Onette, you shared that like your community knows who you are. You engage directly. You shared that like you show up at events sometimes. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we haven't talked about those types of things. So I mean, when I made B-Swarm, I had Onette like sitting on the hives. I had Onette as an NPC in one of the earliest quests, and I knew from my interactions with like game masters in like MMORPGs that it was that human element and that human connection to the people steering the ship that made it feel like you were part of something communally. And so I would spawn monsters in on people. I'd spawn sprouts and stuff. And
in real time.
In real time.
In the server.
Like before messaging service, like sending messages out or role playing as the bears during Christmas and stuff. What we've seen, though, and I knew that mechanic was powerful, but now it is so perfected by Jansen, by Sammy, and we knew that it's that human part of design, that more just irreverent and more immediate and personal part. But they systematized it, and it's just so crazy to see it blow into record-breaking mechanics. Yeah, it's just insane.
Thank you. Colin, did you have anything to add about this? Like your team?
Just on team size. I think something that we've learned as a studio, and also just talking to everybody on this panel, is that it seems like when you want to start a project and you want your project to be long-lasting, it can be extremely helpful to have a very passionate team who really wants to work on it on day one. And then during the course of the game's life cycle, you will bring on additional members to do additional jobs. You'll bring on QA teams to test events and stuff. But ultimately, it will always wrap down to that day one team, because they are the most passionate people, and they are the people who will be most likely to stay on that project. And that usually results in just a small team size. It's easier to accomplish that when there's only a couple of people that need to get on that same page. And that cohesion is also really important to the identity and vision of your game. If you have too many ideas clashing on the development side, the players are going to feel that. So it's really important to just have your creative vision like unified and solid as your game continues to evolve over time.
And it sounds like kind of avoid the temptation just to scale the team for the sake of it, but really stay true to like make sure that your team is representing the values of the game and able to
build
deliver
the loyalty.
Quality.
And that is retention. Retention is loyalty, so they have to trust you. Yeah.
Let's dig into another topic. So all of your titles have been in the market for quite some time. Let's talk about how you've got new players coming in for the first time, but you've got, players who have been around for a really long time. How do you balance that? Because that seems really hard. How do you make sure you're not alienating a certain player?
I would say this is probably the one superpower that every developer wishes they could have, is to like see your game with a fresh set of eyes for the first time again. It's so hard. It's difficult. I don't have a good answer, and I think honestly, for example, in Jailbreak, people love more robberies, more cars, and it's bloated the game with like faster cars. It's harder to rob, harder to stop them, and more robberies. Now everyone's like spread thin, and everyone's all across the map because they're all doing different robberies. And it's something that we just, you have to watch the analytics and keep, like I said even at the beginning, like watch the YouTube videos, like figure out what people are thinking of the game the first time, because you might have designed that first-time user experience, and it is so hard. It's so easy to lose it, and it's so hard to see it for the first time, and it really takes intentional effort to go back and zoom out, I think.
Thanks. Henry, you shared that you've kind of incorporated some non-competitive elements to the game.
Right, exactly. So what we give the players, at least in some of our custom servers, is an ability to kind of keep up with some trends that's going on. So we have things like a hot potato game mode. We have a prop hunt. A lot of people don't really know that these features actually exist in the game until they actually really get into it. And being able to just open that up to the player, they're thinking, wow, there's a whole lot more to this than meets the eye. So I would just, or at least evade. And for the new user experience, at least where I come from on this, is I play with young family members, those that are in the demographic that, they probably are playing the top 5, top 10 studios. They're probably playing Jailbreak right now and don't know what Evade is. And hey, let's just join me, let's play this game together, and tell me how you feel about it a little bit afterwards.
So you can see for the first time how they're experiencing it?
I could be biased, but I know my little brother would absolutely brutalize whatever I say about this.
And it's difficult because the people we test with, like our testing team, they become set in their old ways, and you gotta find the new people. So
exactly.
Yeah, you mentioned that sometimes your own testers can get entrenched, and that you need fresh perspective outside of that. How about you, Colin?
I would say that our game has always tried to take an approach of just don't mess with the first-time user experience. I think we hit really well on it at one point, and we just wanted to keep that the same as long as possible. But that's not always realistic, and that's not always going to be possible when you're adding so many things like features and season passes and that kind of thing. So in those circumstances, we've definitely taken an approach to just try and make the first few items of those new features as fun as possible, and then balanced the same as our first items. So a great example is our first gun in Season 3 does the same damage as some of the original guns you get as a new-time player, but we've just made it really fun to use, so our existing players use it anyways.
So there's novelty, but then there's practical applications and how that helps you progress in the game, and you kind of balance that.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, cool. How about you, Onette?
Yeah, wait, what were we just talking about? Oh yeah, okay, so how do you make the late game players and the new players? I think I kind of touched on this a little bit. I think when you join Beastworm for the first time, what you do at first is very similar to what it was in 2018. Beastworm was already constructed in such a way that you have to unlock gates. You're hidden away in buildings and hidden away by talking to bears and stuff. It unravels the more complex stuff to you. So I could just hide those further in. Even stuff like dialogue and stuff becomes, at first it's very literal and very children's book, and then it becomes more like, I don't know, just teasing or longer and more narrative and stuff, but deeper in. And so as I did updates, I would just sometimes try to smooth out the early stage, but mostly I would just elaborate on those deeper layers, which you don't really become apparent to you until you've played Beastworm for weeks or months sometimes, so it really wasn't a problem. And when you join, it still just looks as simple as it did day one, which I think many simulators, many other games, they become so bloated that when players join, the first 90% of the game is irrelevant, and they're trying to rush you to the most recent content, and then the entire world kind of hollows out and collapses in on itself. And
trying to rush them to the late game.
And also you join and you're overwhelmed, obviously, like you were saying, Colin. It's and that just scares people away. So you have to meditate on it a lot, yeah.
Yeah, you have to be careful about, because I think Jailbreak being 8 years old now, we have so many players that have really earned everything in the game. And so when we're thinking about what new content to add, it's like, okay, do we cater to these these people that have like infinite amounts of money and like keep them around, or do we focus more on the people that are just starting out? And it's it's a tough decision to make, especially in an open world game. And I still haven't quite figured out how to do it, but it's important to be intentional about thinking about that.
We're almost up at time. Do any of you have like parting advice? There's folks in the audience that would love to hear any best practice or advice that you have that you didn't get to share so far.
I could start. Honestly, guys, time optimization, very big. You can have a really solid team starting off, and they may not be as passionate as you. Be sure that you are fully aware that some people need breaks. Burnout happens a lot. And honestly, if you keep a good schedule, you guys will be able to push that game that you really wanted to release.
That's really good advice.
Yeah, I would add on, mine's always just have fun. You know, I think Jailbreak, I made senior year in high school. I would come home from school and just work on it 2 hours a day. And 4 months later, we launched the first version of Jailbreak. And it was just always fun. Every day was fun working on it. And I think having that constrained time, like you don't need to grind yourself for 12 hours a day. You might not find it fun to do the work anymore. So yeah, just time management and keep it fun. Keep it fun.
Yeah.
I would say my parting advice is keeping it fun is extremely important. I think that that's definitely something I would agree with. I would also agree that I think when you're thinking about what your players are up to and you're trying to listen to what they want, for every player that comes to you, there are hundreds that have just refused to talk to you or leave a comment or anything like that. So it's extremely important to go into your game and watch what players are doing and try and go on YouTube and see how people are playing it and really pay attention to what the community as a whole is doing, because if you try to listen to just those loudest voices, they can lead you astray.
Thank you so much. I think that's time. There's a blinking red light, so I'm assuming that means we need to go. But how about a round of applause for our amazing developers? Thank you so much, you guys. Awesome.
We're done.
All right, let's take our plant. It's a personal joke.
Yay, good job.